When a movie hits its midpoint, a plot point usually happens that dramatically increases the stakes and tension of the story. What's interesting about the midpoint scene in Inglourious Basterds is that it does this, but without any of the main characters that the audience has come to know. How and why does Tarantino do this? We're talking all about it this week in Kaden's Movie Club. There's a story structure that you can map onto most Western storytelling. Good storytellers know these rules, so they know when to break them, but at the end of the day, most movies will still more or less follow this structure. To put it simply, it's the 3-act structure. So at the beginning of Act 1, there is an inciting incident, your first clue as to what the story is. At the end of Act 1, which is about 25% of the way into the story, you know the main question: will this character achieve this goal? Halfway through Act 2, which is 50% of the way through the story, a midpoint happens, which heightens the tension. Something happens to make the character's goal more difficult. By the end of Act 2, about 75% of the way through the story, a culmination happens. We think we know the answer to the question. Sometimes this is our all hope is lost moment. Our heroes are down and out. Then somewhere in Act 3, a twist happens, which is like a twist of fate or circumstances, which allows us to get to our resolution. And sure enough, in Inglourious Basterds, right around the 70-minute mark of the 150-minute movie, we have a midpoint scene that dramatically increases the overall tension. So to give a little context on what's led up to this point, spoilers if you haven't seen it, the movie takes place in Nazi-occupied France. There's a group of American soldiers that have been nicknamed the Inglourious Basterds. They have been recruited by British allies for a mission known as Operation Kino. Operation Kino's goal is to take out some of the highest-ranking German leaders in one fell swoop. They'll be able to do this because several of those leaders will be attending the premiere of a new Nazi propaganda film in Paris. Representing the British in this operation is Hickox, who before the war started was a film critic who specialized in German cinema. Now for the British to know all this information about the film premiere, they must have an informant, which is none other than the famous German actress Bridget von Hammersmark. When we reach the midpoint of the story, the plan is for Hickox and 2 of all those men to make contact with von Hammersmark in a small tavern. To blend in and avoid any questions, they will impersonate German officers. Right before they're about to enter the tavern, Hickox stresses that they're not expecting trouble, and von Hammersmark deliberately chose this location because it's isolated, so there shouldn't be very many Germans around. This is when the bar scene begins with an immediate cut to
Da lässt sich überhaupt nicht drüber streiten.
von Hammersmark playing a game with a whole party of German soldiers. So when Hickox and the others arrive in the basement, we already have a baseline tension. Things are not going as planned.
Die Frau des Oberfeldwebels da drüben hat gerade ein Kind bekommen. Und sein vorgesetzter Offizier hat ihm und seinen Freunden den Abend freigegeben.
These are not really the main characters. The primary protagonists of the movie are Aldo and Shoshana. The primary antagonist is Hans Landa. They are not here. We kind of know all those men like Stiglitz, but they're supporting characters. We were only introduced to Hickox one scene earlier, and this is the first time we're meeting von Hammersmark. So the scene has to establish how each of these people will handle a stressful situation very quickly.
Wir sollten gehen.
Nein. Wir sollten bleiben. Würde es doch seltsam aussehen, wenn wir gehen würden, ohne etwas getrunken zu haben.
We learn here that von Hammersmark is smart, cool, and collected. She's adapting to the situation. She's running the show.
Andere Neuigkeit ist kolossal. Also lasst euch nichts anmerken. Der Führer wird dazu stimmen.
This is our first big bump of tension. A tipsy Wilhelm comes over to interrupt right as she was about to reveal something big.
Es gibt keine Riefenstahl, es gibt nur eine von Hammersmark!
He spills beer on them, they're clearly irritated. We're wondering, is this going to blow up?
Sie haben vielleicht nicht die Gastfreundschaft des Fräuleins mit ihrem betrunkenen, rüpelhaften Benehmen strapaziert. Aber sehr wohl die meine.
Hickox has lost his cool, but he's done it in a pretty clever way. With his disguise, he outranks this guy and decides to see if he can reprimand him into going away.
Entschuldigen Sie, Herr Sturmführer, Sie haben einen sehr ungewöhnlichen Akzent.
Uh-oh. Hickox's accent is not passing as German. This is not good. Stiglitz tries to scare him off again, but
Dürfte ich mich vielleicht erkundigen?
there's another officer in the tavern.
Aber auch ich ein sehr genaues Ohr für Akzente. Und wie er finde ich Ihren äußerst seltsam.
And we actually have met this character before. A few scenes earlier, he was introduced as a Gestapo officer. But in case the audience has forgotten, there's lots of things that let us know he outranks everybody else in the scene. It's in the costume, he's more decorated, it's a different color, a bigger hat. You can tell in the cinematography, he commands the room, he's a threatening presence. You can tell in the dialogue, they address him as Major, and you can see it in the actor's performance, the way he addresses everybody else. And of course, the audience is assumed to have historical context. We all know what kind of people these are. They're natural villains. Point is, the tension just dramatically increased. If the group was having trouble fending off a mere staff sergeant, tricking this high-ranking officer is a whole different task entirely.
Ich bin in einem Dorf geboren, Das im Schatten des Pitzpalüli. In dem Dorf sprechen alle so. Haben Sie den Riefenstahl-Film gesehen?
He uses what knowledge he has about German cinema to come up with some story to explain his accent. Notice we stay in a wide shot for a very long time here. We're meant to see everybody's reactions to see who is buying this story. But does the officer buy it?
Meine Herrschaften, darf ich mich zu Ihnen setzen?
Gerne.
Probably not, since he's now going to join them. Again, we already saw how quickly a hammered Wilhelm was able to spot issues. Now we have this quick-witted Major. So we've had a couple dramatic bumps in tension, but for the next couple minutes, we switch now to a steady increase.
Was tun Sie hier?
Außer mit diesem reizenden Fräulein ein Getränk zu nehmen.
Nun, dieses Vergnügens bedarf es keiner weiteren Ecke.
A mind game is being played. The officer is trying to catch Hickox in a lie. Hickox is lying, but has to look like he's not, so he's forced to reveal part of the plan.
Spaß beiseite, was tun Sie in Frankreich?
Ich begleite die Dame zu Minister Goebbels Filmpremiere.
We know this is dangerous because in the previous scene where the Major was introduced, he was part of the planning committee for the film's premiere. He has insider knowledge about it. The risk of exposing their entire plan has just increased dramatically. And we know the stakes here from the previous scene.
But if trouble does happen, we need you to make damn sure no Germans or French, for that matter, escape from that basement. If Frau von Hammersmark's cover is compromised, the mission is kaput.
But the story checks out. The officer has nothing else to go on. It seems like we've reached the natural conclusion of this interaction when the officer comes up with a clever way to keep his interrogation going.
Wie wär's, wir spielen es auch?
Ja, gerne. Ein Spiel.
Wunderbar.
See, he can't outright question them in case they really are who they say they are. But he's clearly suspicious, so he suggests they play the card game.
Die Idee des Spiels ist es, den Namen einer berühmten Person auf eine Karte zu schreiben.
There's two shots here that are really important. It's subtle, but both Hickox and Stiglitz are nervous. Since the game is entirely based around shared cultural knowledge, if Hickox makes it seem like he doesn't know standard information that all Germans would know, their cover is blown. This moment is the riskiest one yet. So now we've established a ticking time bomb. It's only a matter of time before something goes wrong here. The Major goes first, and it may seem like he's playing an innocent game.
Auf der Schiffsreise lag ich da in Ketten.
Ja,
Als ich in Amerika ankam, wurde ich da in Ketten zur Schau gestellt.
ja.
Also dann muss ich King Kong sein.
Ah,
He's demonstrating his skill with deductive reasoning, of piecing together clues to identify someone. He's literally doing what everyone else at the table hopes he will not do. So of course, before it can proceed, Hickox tries to put a stop to it.
Ich fürchte, Sie stören.
Aber nur, wenn das Fräulein hier meine Gegenwart als Störung empfindet, bin ich auch ein Störenfried.
So the Major puts the ball in von Hammersmark's court. She's been playing nonchalant the whole time, so he throws her a curveball to see what she'll do. She continues to play it cool, and the tension is rising to a crescendo when
Es war ein Scherz.
it seems they fooled him and he will leave, but he wants to share one final drink with them.
3 Gläser.
The Major sees Hickox's order and something changes.
Ich muss sagen, ich habe genug von dem Affentheater.
The jig is up and the Major has pulled a weapon. Then the bartender, who we saw earlier is loyal to these soldiers, reaches for his weapon. Then Hickox and Stiglitz pull theirs. Tension now reaches the boiling point as we enter a standoff. Hickox tries to negotiate, but the evil of this man in front of him becomes clear. He'd rather sacrifice a room full of his countrymen than let his enemies win.
Das ist egal, was mit den anderen Leuten hier in diesem Raum passiert. Wir zwei nirgendwo hingehen.
Hickox can tell it's not a bluff, it's a matter of belief for the Major.
Well, if this is it, old boy, I hope you don't mind if I go out speaking to kings.
Now speaking in his native British accent, Hickox has resigned. He understands they're at a stalemate, and so
It would appear there's only one thing left for you to do.
And what would that be?
Stiglitz.
Say auf Wiedersehen to your nuts.
all the tension that's been building then explodes. While most of our shots have lasted for several seconds, lingering on characters, the length of the shots now becomes less than a second, with rapid editing and fast camera movements to highlight the chaos. Within seconds, almost everyone in the room has died. In the next scene, von Hammersmark reveals to Aldo and his team that the Fuhrer himself will be attending the premiere, dramatically upping the stakes. The plan has been entirely ruined now because her leg is wounded, and Hickox, the one person with knowledge of German cinema, is gone. Not to mention the two members of Aldo's team that speak German. So our tension is dramatically heightened, the goal has gotten more difficult. But here's the interesting part. Yes, movies have a structure that helps the story build and maintain tension. But even individual scenes have their own story structure. The bar scene in Inglourious Basterds is a great scene of suspense because it follows this same structure. This scene is about 24 minutes long, so the first shot is von Hammersmark in the bar with German soldiers, which is our inciting incident. Around 6 minutes in, 25%, Wilhelm sits down with the group. This is the end of Act 1. The question is established. Will the group be able to leave the tavern without blowing their cover? Around 12 minutes in, 50%, the Major decides to play the game with them. This is the midpoint within the midpoint. The tension is dramatically heightened. Now the third story beat comes a little early, but around 16 minutes in, the Major laughs and says he's joking. Everything seems like it's okay. This is the culmination. Just a moment later, we have our twist when Hickox holds up a 3.
He ordered 3 glasses. We ordered 3 glasses. That's the German 3.
And this twist leads us to the release of tension, which gets us to our resolution. Everything has gone horribly wrong. Quentin Tarantino, the writer and director of Inglourious Basterds, is actually known for his stories that break standard structure. So with the bar scene in Inglourious Basterds, we didn't expect a character like Hickox to die because the movie acts like he's a new lead character. But Tarantino subverts our expectations. But within that, even Tarantino still uses classic structure because it's one of the best ways to maintain tension. This is an incredible scene of suspense, and even more impressive that it's accomplished with characters we've mostly come to know within the scene. We quickly learn that von Hammersmark is calm and collected, that Stiglitz is struggling with an inner rage, and that Wickox's facade is faltering. All of this makes the goal of getting out of that tavern more and more complicated right up until we think they may have pulled it off, and then they don't, which makes the overall goal of Operation Kino all the more difficult for the rest of the movie. And next week, we'll be discussing yet another scene of suspense in the Coen brothers' No Country for Old Men. Similar to Inglourious Basterds, No Country features a couple different converging storylines that all tie together thanks to a briefcase full of money. These 3 stories intertwine as the characters shift in positions of power regarding the briefcase. And also similar to Inglourious Basterds, there's multiple scenes we could look at to examine tension, but which one will it be? We'll have to find out next week. But here's some questions to keep in mind while you watch. Pay attention to the first and last scenes of the movie. How do you think they're connected? Pay attention to how scenes build tension in different ways. When is dialogue used? When is it visual tension? How do they compare? Were you surprised by the way any of these plot lines resolved? Why do you think the filmmakers chose to end the stories the way they did? So let me know what thoughts and observations you had about Inglourious Basterds, and I'll see you back here next week to discuss No Country for Old Men. If you want to stay in the know about Movie Club, you know where to go.